so much for meeting me today. It's a pleasure to be able to talk to you and ask you a few questions.
Thank you for asking me and inviting me. It's a pleasure to chat with you guys.
Oh, no, anytime, of course. So the first question is, I just want to get to know a little bit more about you and like your journey. So I just wanted to know, how did you know you wanted to become a writer?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And actually, I knew since I was very little, like I want to say 3, because
Wow.
my mom taught me to read when I was really young. I learned to read before I learned anything about numbers. So words and language really, I guess, just started appealing to me from a very young age. And I was always very fascinated with story in any form, books, stage, screen. I mean, even what you and I are doing right now is considered storytelling. And so
Yeah.
it's such an important part of our culture in all
I-
cultures. And I have a very vivid imagination, and even from a young age had lots of ideas and characters that came to me, and scenarios. And my mom says that they were always very dramatic, like soap opera type situations, and a lot of dialogue. Like I think I could have gone in the direction of screenplay probably, because I like good dialogue.
Mm,
So I knew from a young age that I really wanted to storytell, but it took me a while to understand how you get into that sort of industry and how difficult it was, especially at that time.
mm,
So I guess it kind of discouraged me for most of my life to pursue it, because, it can take years to find an agent, write something that would impress an agent, and then for that agent to sell it to a publisher would take how many years, and then the pay was really poor, especially in the beginning, and nobody knows your name. So there was a lot of things that discouraged me from really trying to go in that direction, and I ended up doing lots of other things, without which I wouldn't be successful today, because I ended up going into marketing for consumer packaged goods, and that just taught me so much about product development and
mm.
packaging, marketing, and copywriting and advertising, and like all those other aspects that indie authors really need. And so when I learned in, I think it was 2015 or early 2016, that indie publishing was a thing, it was an immediate, like, that's it, that the time is now, I'm going to do
Yeah.
this. I had all the experience I needed. I just needed to commit myself to it and actually make it happen. So,
Yeah.
I was almost, I want to say I was 36 at that point. So it took a long time, but eventually it happened.
Well, that's the thing. I don't think there's a timing on it. And the fact that I think at the end of the day, it came at the perfect time because you learn all of those skills that are very valuable, very needed in
Mhm.
self-publishing. I mean, you don't, like, people don't always realize what goes into it because if you go down the self-publishing route, you do have to do a lot of things on your own. And it's one thing writing the book, which obviously is very important. It's another thing also trying to market that and sell that. So the fact that you learn all those skills
Yeah.
is very applicable and very valuable. So it's really interesting, like hearing your journey, because it's quite different to, I guess, a lot of other readers or authors I've talked to, I guess, because they kind of have to learn on the way. So
Mhm.
did that make it easier for you, like having
I
that
think
knowledge, do you
I
think?
I think it did, because I understood at that point, before I even started started writing, that I would have to present my story series, my idea, to readers, and give them kind of an attractive package, because really marketing is
Mm.
about seduction, right? It's like, look at
Yeah.
this story and how interesting it is, and wouldn't you like to pick it up and give it a try? So you're really trying to create an attractive package overall, and also all of that education made me understand I really need to have a website in place. I need to think about my series. Nobody knows who I am, so how can I entice them into the series to trust that I'm going to give them a good experience? And that's why I ended up creating a nonlinear series. So the original one that I wrote is 6 books long, but the first 5 books were happened simultaneously and could be read in any order. And I
Oh,
did that because I wanted to have as many entry points into the series as possible. Like if you're not interested in this book, maybe you like this character. And I could then, even though I only had 6 books out or 5 books out in the first year, I always had something new to market. Otherwise, you're always going to book one, and that's all you can market, because that's where readers have to start. So if I hadn't had that marketing mindset, I probably wouldn't have made that creative choice.
Yeah.
So I do think it helps a lot.
That is really, really interesting. And from my point of view as well, I did marketing before, well, I did fashion and then I did marketing. But so I understand like where you're coming from, and reaching the customer at different points in their journey is so important, like you say, because when you do write one book, you really are limiting yourself. So I think having multiple different avenues for people to reach them, and even reaching them at different times of their like journey, like near the end they realize, oh, there's 3 more books, they're more likely to go back in time and think, oh, I want to pick up that one. Whereas if they just saw one, they'll be like, oh,
just dismiss it.
Exactly, they're more likely to dismiss it. So that's very, very interesting actually, because it's something I think is very relevant and very like people are catching on to now with box set bundles, like create whole, and like you say, like with your brand, you need to create a whole image for yourself, a whole journey, something will, at the end of the day, you want lots of people to be interested in it, but
make it
yeah, exactly. So sorry if I'm waffling, but I just personally think it's really, really interesting, and I think lots of people will be more interested in like the marketing side of things.
Yeah.
Because I think people don't often know like where to start. So having even just that advice is so valuable.
It comes with its own set of challenges, because instead of writing something linear where this happens, then this happens, then this happens, I had to write 5 stories that were happening at the same time to characters who knew each other. And normally at the end of a book in a series, you want to create a hook to compel them to buy the next book, read the next book, to see what happens. So I had to find another way of hooking people. And so because this series was contemporary and my characters have cell phones, I had them texting each other. So you would get hints of what was happening in the other books. And I just had to hope that that was enough, for readers to be like really curious, like, oh, I wonder what this friend is up to. You've kind of had, gotten to know the character a little tiny bit through this title, but now you can get to know her as a first person character. And it does work if you thread if you make the connections through the book strong enough and give them enough of an idea of why they might be interested in that next story. It can work. And I would say to authors starting out, it's something to consider when you first start planning how you're going to break into the market, and with what, and how are you going to market it? And are you going to try and market one book to a very specific niche of readers? Are you going to try and create a series like I did, where you could market 5 different products throughout the year and try and get them into the series that way? These are questions that a lot of authors, I think, don't necessarily ask themselves, because they aren't approaching it from a marketing viewpoint. They're approaching it from just the story idea. So, and both can be successful, but I think I was quite lucky to have that marketing background, and having had worn all of those hats, and understand, like, let me think about these other aspects. I'm not just telling a story. I have to actually convince people to read it. How do I do that?
Yeah, of course. I think that's such a powerful tool though, like the way you've weaved all of those like motifs and messages, and you've kind of kept the reader like guessing, because you don't know unless you do read the next book. But it's not like a obvious way of going about it, if you know what I mean. But that's so, like, I'm really interested in, like, now I want to read the books.
Oh, good.
So you've definitely done something right there. But yeah, what drew you to fantasy in particular, and like particularly for teens and young readers? What do you think drew you to that market?
Well, a couple of things. Like, I guess when I was growing up, I don't want to say like teens, and I also consider sort of your 20s, you're still growing and changing a lot, although you're an adult. It was the genre that I really liked. Young adult fascinated me, because the characters are at the brink of self-discovery. They don't necessarily know themselves like you do when you're, older, you've been through more. Maybe you found your partner for life, you know what your occupation is, and there are other issues that you deal with in your life at that point, whether it be kids or other challenges. But with somebody who's in their teens or even early 20s, all of that can be a big question mark. And the self-discovery process can be woven so beautifully, especially into a fantasy book, because magic gives you a metaphor that can be used in so many different ways to augment the storytelling process. So in the first, in those 5 books that I was talking about, each of those girls, main characters, goes to a different country. I love international travel, and a lot of readers love to travel, especially even if it's in their mind. So you get different cultural experiences, and you also get like an origin story where that character undergoes a magical transformation that then educates them on their own personality. Like the book shows the character to themselves and the reader at the same time, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
I just love the rich opportunity that there is for someone who's really young, who's coming onto the cusp of adulthood, where there's such a big change, from going through puberty to moving out of the house to falling in love for the first time to all those really exciting things that are just like, I'll never run out of ideas, I don't think, for someone who's that age. It's just a very exciting time and really appealed to me in the beginning. And I think there was also a part of me that thought, maybe young adult readers will be a little bit more forgiving. So if I happen to be a terrible storyteller, they won't so much. Probably not true, but it's what I told myself in the beginning.
Fair enough. I mean, I think it's not something I've really thought about personally, and I am quite like early on in my career, and as someone who is, I guess, on the younger side, like I always thought, like, I felt like I was just starting at the beginning. So for me, it was like, oh, I've got to get ahead of these people. It's a race. Like, there's so many people trying to get the same job as me, trying to go to the places I want to go, do what I want to do. So I need to be ahead of the game. So in my eyes, from my perspective, I thought it was quite scary. And it's so interesting hearing it from your side that it's quite like very positive. It's very like opportunistic, or it's very it's a lot more optimism than I kind of anticipated when I started my career, because it's quite daunting and scary. But I think the beauty is that you do find out all the things about yourself, like what you like, what you don't like, and the self-discovery in that sense is magical, like you say. So I think taking a step back from your own fear, it is actually very beautiful, like going into it.
Exciting. They say when you feel excitement, and it is actually the same, I don't want to say this incorrectly, but it's the same hormones that are happening inside your body, but your perception is, whether it's exciting or whether it's scary, your body will react the same way. It's just through the lens of your worldview and your understanding whether something is exciting or scary. Right. And they're kind of interwoven. Like they're both, if you're going to audition for something and you want to act, and this could be your breakout, I mean, you're going to have both excitement and fear. And those kind of emotions are very strong, I think, in your early life, just as you're saying, like it's quite daunting, but you're probably also like kind of, I want to do things. I want to prove myself to myself and also to my family and my colleagues and whoever. Right. So like you said, the opportunities are, if you're unattached, you have no children, maybe you haven't decided where you want to go to university yet, or maybe you're just finishing university. Like the world is so wide open, much more so for a young person than it would be for someone of age, for example, who's got, I live in one place, I'm married, I have pets I have to look after and plants I have to keep alive, and I can't really go very far. And, so I think that's a lot for me.
That is so true. And the world is literally your oyster at a young age. You can go anywhere. You can drop off the face of it. No one will like say, come back to feed the dog. I mean, maybe, but that is very true. Also, I heard like excitement and fear is the same thing. I've heard that before, and I've tried to tell myself, don't nervous, you're actually so excited, but it is a mindset thing, and yeah,
Mhm.
it's very, very interesting. I think for me as well, like I do prefer reading um younger characters in a book because it's like I can relate to it more.
Right.
It is nice, like touching on those themes.
Yeah.
Um, so going back to the self-publishing side of things, what were those early self-publishing days like for you in particular? Like, did you have any big surprises, or did you kind of know what to expect? Because obviously you know a bit more of your marketing background, or
Yeah, it's a good question. When I think back to those days, I didn't really know what to expect. I believed that I was capable of telling a good story and kind of making a good run at it, but I didn't know for sure whether it was something I could do full time, because I always had jobs. I was always working at a corporation or a small company, and I always had a regular paycheck, like since I was 14. And I was living in Italy at the time, and I stayed in Italy without work and without a huge amount of savings to spend the entire year just writing. This is before I launched anything, because I really wanted to make sure I had my strategy in place before I released anything to the world. And so when I released book one, and it made just under $2,000 in 1 month, I was so relieved. But I was just, I'm not going to hopefully, make 17 cents a day for the next 5 years. I can actually afford to buy a cappuccino, and fund, hopefully some advertising and get some more. So that was a bit of a surprise, just because when you release something to the world, you really have no idea if people like it or buy it, or review it well. My editor at the time did write to me in the opening. I still remember the email that I received from her after she did the first run over my first book. And the very opening line said, "Did you know that you're a writer?" And I burst out into, I cried. I was like, it was the only validation that I had that I hadn't written a turd, for lack of a better word. So that was encouraging. And then to have, some immediate success, which now in retrospect, I know had a lot to do with the market at the time, because this was in early 2017, late 2016. And as you know, the publishing industry changes so fast.
yeah,
Like every 6 months, it feels like even that is even getting to be shorter. Like every 3 months you look up and you're like, the stuff that I'm doing isn't working. I have to find something else. I have to try something else. Where are the readers? Like, and there's so much more being published now, millions of books a year. And I think at that time, like the timing, as you mentioned earlier, was perfect. Because I'd had the experience that I needed to have on the marketing side, and the industry wasn't so flooded, and the KDP wasn't so flooded that I couldn't carve out a place for this little book to stand out. Nowadays, it is a different story. If I were to start over, I would be daunted. And not to say that you can't, start today and be successful. You absolutely can. But I think I would have to ask myself a lot more specific questions going into it about the brand I'm creating. And what kind of books can I write over and over and over again and not get sick of, for one thing?
yeah,
Do I want to write something that's more evergreen? What's my launch speed? Can I write a book a year or 3 books a year? And what sort of genres are allowing, because you have certain different rules in different genres, like an epic fantasy writer, because those books are long and because they tend to be evergreen. Epic fantasy is not something that dates itself like contemporary fantasy does, because you can pick up a Lord of the Rings book and still read it today and be like, oh, this is amazing. But if you pick up contemporary fantasy from the 80s, and it's set in modern day, you're going to be like, well, where's the cell phones? Like, where's the technology? So I find epic, it doesn't date itself quite as, and those are considerations I never really thought of at that time. And I would definitely tell someone who was thinking about getting into the industry to think about those things now. Think about yourself, your future self, and where you want to be in 5 years, and what you want to be writing, and how fast you want to write, and what can you commit to this brand that you're creating.
yeah.
That kind of went off off on a
No,
tangent.
no, definitely. Like, I love hearing all about it, and I think people don't always think about the long-term journey, because it is a long-term commitment, like you say, and whether you want to commit to it is a big question.
Mm-hmm.
And
it can suffer for the first little while. Like in the first 2 years, maybe 3, I was writing 6 books a year. Like that is a crazy pace. When I look at my pace now, which is half that or even less. And I look back, no wonder my body kind of broke. Like you have to look after yourself. I was waking up in the middle of the night with blue arms that I couldn't move. Like there was major issues happening within my, I was writing on a laptop, sitting on a sofa, like the worst thing ever. Now I have like ergonomic keyboard and ergonomic mouse and a sit stand table and a walking pad that I can put under my, things like that. In those early days, I think I just was I had to succeed because I didn't have a job and I was living in Italy. It's not like I could just go off to, I spoke English. I couldn't, operate in Italian, though I had a little bit of it. So the pressure was intense. And in the beginning, you really want to get a backlist out there because even though an older book won't make as much because it doesn't get that hot new release juice, it's still going to add to your income, right? To have that backlist running so that you can start to slow down a little bit and think more carefully about what you want to do and maybe not kill yourself for the first, little while. So I definitely did. I feel for authors who write fast and who are just starting out and feeling like they really have to pump out the content. You have to take care of yourself because if you don't look after your body, something will happen and you'll be bedridden, so.
Yeah, of course. I think health is always your top priority, isn't it?
Yeah.
And your mind is obviously so important when you're writing because that's where the magic, all comes to life.
Yes.
So it's good that you've been through that journey, but you now know like what to avoid, what to not let you get, like obviously writing 6 books in a year is amazing, but also you got to look at it as like, what are you're not bringing your attention to other things, and what are you like,
what is that costing you to be able to do that? Yes.
Exactly.
I did have to figure out what I could reasonably produce in a year for you. And this is a very personal thing because I know people who can write a book in 4 weeks, really good one. My friend Ryan Scow can do that. And I just I cannot, I will break. I had to find my breaking point and then step back from that. So, my first book took me 9 months to write just to figure out how to write a book. My second book, I pushed myself. It took me 6 months. My third book took me 3 months. My fourth book took me 1 month. And then I was like, okay, I cannot do that. I can't keep up with that. So then I backed off, and that's a very personal thing for every author. You have to figure out what are you capable of where you can maintain some sort of good health and balance and consistent releases, because readers are going to, you're going to get emails on release day that say, great book, where's the next one? And you're like, I just finished it. I just released this book.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of expectations, isn't there, for you to keep going and to keep up like the momentum, but you have to also listen to yourself and what you need. And it's striking that balance, I think, because everyone's different, everyone can handle different things. I mean, it depends what your whole life daily routine is as well and where you are. And obviously there is a lot of pressure, isn't there, with not just the finance side, but you want to keep on that momentum of being successful and becoming the best writer. So I think it is really valuable and really good for people to speak about these things, because I think not everyone talks about that side of things. They just hear the success and not, actually, even though I did do that, it was hard and
cost me a lot.
So it's really, really nice for you to be able to share that with us.
Thank you.
So I was going to say, so this is very relevant, when you're starting a new book or a series, what is your process like? I know we spoke a bit about the motifs throughout, but how do you actually begin writing a series?
That's such a great question. I think for me, I'm not one of those people who is shy of ideas. So I have actually more ideas than I'll ever be able to write in a lifetime, which is not, I hear that like a common question is, where do you get your ideas from? Are you ever going to work? Do you ever worry about writer's block? What do you do when writer's block hits? I don't suffer from that side of it. I suffer from the more other side, which is, which of these ideas are you going to pursue? Which means you have to sacrifice other ideas and not pursue them, which is actually really hard. But once you've written one series, you have options because you now have a universe that you've created, secondary characters that exist. They're just waiting for you to ask them questions about themselves and reveal maybe a whole potential for another series, which is what ended up happening with me. That original 6-book series that I wrote, the Elemental Origin series, I didn't intend for it to become what it became. But because readers liked it, they kept saying, will you write more for this character, that character? So I ended up, a trilogy for her and a trilogy for her and 5 books for her. And now I'm working on another trilogy. Like it just grows because you're now exploring these side characters that have their stories of their own, and every character can become a main character, in my view. If you're starting over from scratch, I often, this is probably just specific to me, but I often brainstorm titles of stories. I don't know what the idea is behind it necessarily. I just like the sound of the title because a title is so important that the title alone can actually draw readers to the series. And so I'll sometimes brainstorm just titles, and then a title will jump out at me and it won't leave me alone for weeks on end. And I'll be like, okay, what is this saying? What is this about? And I'll start to develop like what the world is like. I do try and do an outline for a fairly specific outline for the book one, and then an idea of what's going to happen in the subsequent book so that I know where it ends. I never start writing unless I know how it ends. I may not know how to get there because sometimes you develop that as you're writing. But I'll always do that for myself. And some people are fine to just sit down and start writing completely pantsing it, not having any plan. I can't do that. I will end up, what I want is when I sit down to actually pump out words, I've actually done the hard part already and I'm just creating the scene. So for me, that's how I operate, is that I've planned it and now I have to write this scene because this is where it fits in the outline. And that's kind of the way I operate.
Yeah, so interesting. I mean, even for me, I need a plan. Like, if I don't know where I'm going from A to B to B to C, I won't have a clue. And I think with writing an ending as well, you kind of leave yourself that permission to fill in the gaps, but also not go sidetracked. Because knowing me, if I didn't have an ending, I'll just go anywhere. And I think that so lead a story maybe down a good path. I think lots of people, it's great to experiment, but you also kind of, if you have a series, you don't want it to necessarily stray, do you? Because you have an idea for each book.
Right. You can end up so off course, which for some people I think is fine. Like you say, some people are creating the outline as they're writing the scenes. I think Stephen King is like a famous pantser where he just sits down to write and he doesn't know. I mean, that's incredible to me. I'm definitely a planner. And I think it depends where your gifts lie and your talents, because some people can create a scene on the fly, in the moment, imagining what people are saying and doing and the action that's happening and where they're headed. But if I sit down on like nothing scares me more than a blank page and no plan. It's just wired. And so, writing is so intensely personal. I think that's part of the discovery in your early books and in your first year, kind of, you're figuring out how you operate, how you work, because you really don't know until you try it.
Oh, definitely. I'm guessing you've tried the method of no planning, haven't you? And it didn't go very well.
I have done books that will never see the light of day, that are unfinished, that are like, this idea was great, but it just kind of went all pear-shaped at some point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's part of the journey, isn't it? It doesn't all go perfect, but at least you've found your way of working, and I think that's the most important thing, because like you say, it's not good to compare yourself. I mean, as much as other writers are amazing, they have their way of writing and you have yours, and it's just sticking to whatever works for you, isn't it?
That's totally
yeah. Do you have any like fears, or I know you said you don't have any writer's block because you have ideas, but do you have any fears with writing that, I don't know, that stops you in that rhythm of keep going?
I think maybe energy management for me, because now I've written 37 books and I'm on the edge of feeling mentally tired. I'm not going to say exhausted, but tired. And the fear that I have is that my fatigue will increase to a point where I can't hit a deadline. I've always, other than in 2020 when my husband got really sick, and that was the only time I had to pull a pre-order. Every other book I've ever written, I've always managed to hit my deadlines. But sometimes it's stressful, and
Yeah.
sometimes you're working longer hours than you should, or you get into a plot hole or something that didn't go quite the way you planned, and your deadline is creeping up on you, and all of a sudden you have extra work that you didn't anticipate. Like things like that scare me a little bit, which is
Yeah.
why outlining again is so critical to me. And the other thing, I wouldn't say it's a fear, but the fact that the industry changes so fast, and I'm just one person, I don't have a huge team behind me. And what sells books today isn't necessarily going to sell books next month. The volatility of the market and the fact that you invest so much time and energy into a book and then launching it only to find out that readers don't really want it, you know,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can it's a very strange industry because you can depending on what you're writing, if you happen to hit at the right time with the right story, and the tropes are hot and that niche is hot, it can be like a feast, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden your next series is a famine. So that volatility, you do have to get a certain level of comfort with, which is just not a comfortable thing at all. There's no regular paycheck. There's no, stability or security in this type of creative career, which is something all artists, I guess, face, whether you're visual or you're making films or whatever. So that part of it, I think, is the most scary, I
Yeah.
guess.
Of course. Of course. I
Mhm.
think that's why like trend forecasting and marketing like is a lot about looking to the future and looking to what do you think will be hot in a year's time. Have you
Yes.
ever considered that in your journey of like writing a new book? Do you think, oh, what will be, yeah,
What
exciting?
it's a great question. And actually, I've never been, until recently, now I start thinking about it, but I've never been one of those people that wrote to market. I always just wrote what I wanted to write. Within reason, also, responding to readers saying, I want more of this character. Okay, sure, I liked that character. I'll give you more. But it is now, in retrospect, looking back, like there was a time period, I want to say 3 years ago, 4 years ago, where Academy fantasy was really hot. And I was
Mhm.
like, "Ooh, Academy's fun, a fun setting. I could write this forever." And it did decent. I did put out an Academy series and it did decently in the beginning, but nowadays Academy is not hot. And
Mhm.
what is hot is, like I said before, epic fantasy is kind of evergreen. I'm discovering people really like the epic setting, the large cast of characters, political intrigue, like, Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, that kind of stuff. I'm noticing that stuff maybe it doesn't spike hugely in the beginning, financially speaking, with sales and everything like that. Maybe it has like a less of an explosion, but it settles into a longer term, slightly more consistent sales pace than something like Academy, for example, which went crazy for a short period of time and then just kind of disappeared.
Yeah.
So nowadays, as somebody who's been doing this for almost a decade, I definitely take it into consideration now because, like I said before, I'm trying to think of my future self, and
Mhm.
hopefully she will suffer less because of the present self who's making decisions that are wiser than the ones I made when I was just starting out and had no clue. So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely it's something I would take into consideration now. And if you were a new writer starting out, I mean, you're definitely going to have ideas that you just want to do because you love the idea. And I'm never going to
Yeah.
say don't do that, especially if it's, off trend or whatever. Definitely pursue it because the reader's going to feel the love that you have for that story. Um,
Yeah.
but I would just at least consider it. What is hot right now? What is always kind of on the burner? What is always popular? and what seems like it kind of might flash and then disappear. So I don't know if that helps. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely helps. I think it's important to obviously keep a balance of, you know, having that in your mind, but not letting that take over your whole story. Because at the end of the day, you gotta write what you love, what drives you to write. Because you're gonna have to write 5 more books about it if you want to go in that direction. So it's very write what you like writing about.
Yes.
But
I have who started out writing a genre they weren't really that interested in, but they knew that it was a popular genre, and they pumped out, I don't even know, 60 or 70 titles in this genre that wasn't really their idea of a good time. And now this friend is kind of broken. Like, she's like, I just don't have any enthusiasm to write anymore. Like, she has to go find something else to do now because she's burnt herself out in this punishing, like producing these stories that actually she personally had no investment. And so I've seen what can happen if when you force yourself to, or even wedge yourself into a genre that you don't naturally gravitate towards. That's actually a form of torture.
Yeah.
To have to go write a math textbook, and then you're like scared of numbers, like, you know, it's the same thing.
Yeah, it's like forcing yourself to do a subject at school that you really don't want to do. You're just doing it because you have to, or because you're forced to do it for something. But it's not gonna drive you and excite you in the same way, is it?
Painful. It will be painful. It will be a chore. And as soon as you lose the joy of something, you just don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
Find something else to do.
I hope that person can, like, maybe rediscover themselves and find what they like, because I think they can bring it back. Do you know what I mean? Like, they just probably lost themselves in the process.
I think they need to rest for a little while, you know, and recover their sanity, recover their enthusiasm for writing after having forced themselves to write something that's not interesting. You know, take a break, take a breath, and then, you know, an idea will come at some point. If you're really, if you are a writer and this is your calling, it will come back. I do believe that. Yeah.
I also think doing something completely different for a while will spark a different side of you that will, at the end of the day, it might even spark a whole new idea for a book that you didn't even realize, because sometimes you just need to do what you want to do, even if that's completely something like off topic, something new that you didn't even know you liked, and then you went into it, found out you loved it, found out then, oh, I actually might want to write a book about that, or a book about something, I don't know, your experience. If you go through different doors, you'll find different things for you. And
and actually you might discover, as my German publisher discovered, like, he used to write fiction, but then he started a publishing business in Germany, and he discovered actually he really enjoys publishing other people's work even more than he liked writing his own work. So he wouldn't have discovered that, you know, if he hadn't tried, to your point, something different, and then kind of surprised himself. Now he's like one of the top fantasy publishers in Germany, and he's like, I didn't really know this was going to happen, but I'm really happy that I went down this road. Yeah, you could find something that's slightly adjacent to writing too, and get even more joy out of that. Writing isn't for everyone, you know, it's for certain, I guess, personality type or a certain creative type.
Yeah, well, I mean, so many different aspects of writing, isn't there? And obviously yourself, you find out all of those aspects because you are a one-man show. But yeah, I mean, I think only some people really find that, like, this is definitely what they want to do. Do you know what I mean? Because, I mean, I'm not saying don't try it, but I'm saying, like, you have to try it to find out what you like. You have to just go out there, try and explore, try and just make the most of every aspect, because it might not be for you, but also might definitely be for you, or another side of it, like the marketing side, or publishing, like you say, other people's work, that might be for you. So it's definitely worth trying it, even if you're scared or don't know what to expect, because it might be really good.
Yes.
Yeah,
Exactly.
what advice, I think we've touched on like what you would say to people, um, but is there any more advice you would want to give to authors who are starting their journey?
Oh, there's so many things, like so many topics that you could touch on when somebody is brand new and wanting to embark on this. Like there's the whole storytelling aspect of it, which is its own rich topic. I mean, you can break that into lots of different things: character and plot and prose and outline versus not outlining. And are you screenwriting? Are you writing a book? Do you want to do short style fiction? Like there's that in itself is one huge topic. Um, and then the other side of it is the business side of it is like, are you doing this for a hobby? Are you trying to make a living at it? Do you want to be a writer long term? And if that's your goal, then considering, I think you need to go into the market if you're intending to do it as a business and as a career choice. You need to go into it with more careful planning than if you're just doing it for the joy of it. Because then in that case you don't care. On the financial side of it, maybe you have a situation where you don't have that financial pressure and you can just do whatever you feel like and be artsy. And in that case, go do whatever you want and enjoy it. If you're doing it as I did, which is to transition into a career, um, I would make a plan. I would always sit down and make a plan and say, well, what markets appeal to me? How am I going to write series? Am I going to write one-offs? Am I going to do my type of books involve a lot of history and research? Do I need someone to help me with that? What kind of budget do I need to have in place? Because I always say you definitely need to have an editor. I wouldn't ever suggest to someone that they launch into a career without having at least one other pair of eyes, if not more, on your book, because you won't look at it objectively. You're too close to it. And then there's like, what kind of budget am I working with? What am I willing to sacrifice in terms of, because something might not work or it might work great in terms of advertising and marketing. What kind of design budget do I have? Because the cover is so critical and important. Am I going to commit to Amazon, where a lot of writers, all of their money comes from it, all of their revenues come from Amazon, and others are like, no, I want to be everywhere. I want to be at Barnes and Noble and Apple and all these other places. And that is a completely different strategy than somebody who is Amazon only. Mm-hmm. So if you can find someone to sit down and talk with, if you're really fresh and green and with stars in your eyes and you want to do this as a career, find someone to sit down with who's been doing it, and just ask a ton of questions and ask them. Like, I'm only one person that has a perspective on how to get started, and there's a lot of ways to be successful. Yeah. So a few different people, and start to formulate a plan, and think about, like we said before, what can you write for years to come without wanting to jab your eyes out with a pencil? What are you not going to get sick of? What are you going to always be enthusiastic about, or for a long chunk of time anyway? So yeah, those are the kind of questions I would have asked myself, I think, 10 years ago when I was first starting out. And I did try and ask myself those questions, but not enough. Like, I've meandered a little bit, I'll try this genre, I'll try that genre, I'll try co-authoring. Like, there's a lot of things that I experimented with, rather than sitting down and asking someone, well, what is it like when you co-author with someone? How does that work? For example. Yeah, so just do your research, because it's going to cost you time and energy and money and all of these things to dip your toe in the market. And you just want to give yourself the best start you can possibly give yourself.
Yeah. I think being prepared and doing research is definitely the way to go. To say, how did you come across like Bookvault with your journey? Like, yeah.
I think I came across, it's hard to, you guys have been in my life now for several years, so I'm trying to think how I first heard of you. I think probably I came across mention of Bookvault in an author group on Facebook, because authors tend to congeal in these Facebook groups and then talk and share lessons that they've learned, people that they've spoken with, printers, ad strategies that they're trying that are working or not working. Like, authors, for the most part, are quite supportive of each other and willing to share. So if you find yourself in one of these groups, it can be invaluable. And I think Bookvault was one of those. I think also I was living maybe in the UK at the time, and Bookvault was mentioned. And I loved the idea that you offered print on demand, that I didn't have to warehouse. I don't have space for warehousing. And also warehousing is a lot of upfront investment. And when you're sort of in between committed to Kindle and starting like selling direct, you're not really sure it's going to work. And you don't necessarily want to invest, thousands and thousands of dollars in a print run. And then what do you do if they don't sell? So Bookvault is amazing in that you offer that that in between that allows me to put something up for sale and offer it to readers that they can order, and without doing something that's really high risk. And all amazing. Like, it's just so cool to see you guys growing over the years and all of the features that you're now offering, because to be able to produce something like this that has like foil and the sprayed edges and the beautiful end papers and everything, like, this is amazing to me that I'm able to actually print this one off and sell it to a reader who really wants it without having to buy 5,000 copies through my store, and you guys take care of the whole fulfillment. Like, it's a dream. It's an absolute dream. So I'm so excited that you're there and that you're offering what you're offering, and that you're developing your offering and adding features as you can add them. And I'm sure it must be mayhem sometimes on the back end, because you're printing one of these things, it's like, it's incredible to me. Like, that was just unheard of 5 years ago, 6 years ago. So definitely my future, having discovered that people want these kind of things and are willing to pay for them and are willing to ship them all over the world. I'm definitely, because of you guys, adding into my strategy a development of the print aspect, which I never really thought that much about before. It was always like, well, I'll make sure the print's available on Amazon and maybe a few people will order it here and there. But now I've started a Shopify store, and I'm spending time with developing the design aspect of it, making it really special, and people want that. And I think that's a lot of fun. And just great opportunity for brand building too,
Yeah, definitely. I was going to say, it's going back to marketing and your final product. It's like going back to what you've learned about product design, because at the end of the day, obviously it's the story, but it's also what are people going to see. They're going to see the title, they're going to see how it looks. And it's quite fun, actually, I think, for authors to be so involved with the visual aspect. And I'm glad we've been able to open more doors with that, and the sprayed edges and the foiling and everything. They're all little features, but at the end of the day, they're also massive features that people are going to, grab attention to and think, oh, wow, because you get that of the story without even reading the book.
Yeah, totally. I recently just started advertising this one. And all I did my advertisement's not complicated or fancy. I just filmed myself flipping through the book and showing off the features. And I've had orders every day. People want it. They love it, and it's on genre in the sense that it looks like a fantasy story. It looks like something that has to do with nature, which it is. It's earth magic, flora magic. And so it speaks to readers who like that kind of genre, and they already have a bookshelf that they're populating with beautiful stories. And it is very trendy right now to like Kickstarter and everything like that. People want beautiful books. So I'm very excited about it, and I'm very enthusiastic and hopeful. And I'm in the process actually of just bringing out more of books like this, be able to share those with my readers, because they love them and I love them. And there's something about it that honors all of the work that went into making this story, It's like a little, it's a nod to, it's a ballerina all dressed up, and on stage.
Yeah.
It's hard. Yeah. That's something to celebrate for sure.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I think the book looks amazing. I haven't read it, but it looks amazing and I want to read it just from looking. So I think that is a massive achievement for just yourself, for all the work that's gone into not just that book, but just you as an author.
It's like
very proud.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. That's very kind.
So I'll say we're nearly near the end. I was just going to say, what's next for you in your journey, do you think? What's on the horizon?
I'm excited because I have lots of things coming out. I've got a book, a hardcover of this quality of my latest release that's I've actually just ordered proofs of it and I'm so excited to see it. It's more it's angels and demons and gold foiling and stars and feathers and things like that, a little more modern. So I'm really excited to see that. In this universe, I have my first slipcase coming out to hold the first 4 books in the series, which is going to be absolutely beautiful. I've ordered a proof for that. And another book that's similar to this, well, it's actually a trilogy that I'll put into an omnibus. I'm looking forward to bringing out in a slipcase. So I'm just kind of going crazy now that I've had this in my hands and I'm like, look at that, like that is stunning. What else can I make? With everything else that I've already written, how can I honor that story and honor the readers who love that story and give them an opportunity to have something like, collectible or giftable. Furiously working behind the scenes on the creative aspect of these types of beautiful, the bespoke paperbacks and these deluxe edition lots hopefully coming out this year that I'm really excited to share with readers.
Oh, I'm so excited for you. And that's amazing. Sounds amazing. It sounds like you're really invested and like excited about it, which makes us excited. It's like why we do it in the first place. So that's so lovely to hear.
Like if I'm allowed to ask you something, like what is it like behind the scenes at Bookvault with all the rapid growth that your company is undergoing and how many people are working there? And like, is it like, do you have the excitement that I have on my end for all of these things that you're offering? And what's the dream? I know that's a lot of questions.
You're okay. Well, I think behind the scenes, it is kind of how you imagined it, but it's also not how you imagine it, because so it's all we work in production, like we work very close to production. Production is the warehouse is all the machines are literally on hand. We can walk downstairs and see every step of the journey, which is really nice. From my point of view, you're really involved in that process and you can see like all the hard work that goes into the books. Not just, obviously the special editions have so many different aspects and we'll have a video hopefully soon showing that. But yeah, even just the normal like paperbacks, you can see how much time and energy goes into it. And I think for us, we're really big on personalization and printing on demand so people can just get what they wanted and get what, there's not as much limitations because you can print one copy, single copy, and bring that idea to life. Even if you don't want to commit to it, you can print off a sample copy, see how it looks, see how it feels, read it like a book, and then if you want to commit to that, you can. So there's that option. I mean, for me, I just love seeing all the process of it, because not everywhere you can have access to that. So working so close to it is really amazing. And hopefully in the future we can get more people to have a look at the process. And it's not something we're like putting out there yet. I think it'll be really good.
That really gives you understanding that you can then convey that value to the people who are buying these products. Like you really, when this arrives in the mail, like, yes, you're enchanted by the look of it, because it's beautiful, but to actually really understand the process and everything, all the effort that goes into first creating it and then you guys producing it and actually distributing it and accepting an order for one thing and then printing that one thing and then packaging that one thing and even mailing it. It's huge. It's huge. Everything that has to happen perfectly, seamlessly, ideally for this to land in their hands. And to be able to convey that to the reader so that they understand it. That's why I love that you guys are going to be doing videos and stuff and showing us more of the back end of it. Because otherwise you would have no idea and you might take for granted the fact that this exists,
Or people just didn't know it was there. So it's nice that we can put that out there and show that this is what's possible. And I like to say we're very big on like customer service and making sure like we're transparent on both ends and helping the person. And yeah, sometimes there's hurdles in the way, but the fact that we're very transparent and just want the best for you. So yeah, I think that is
that. I mean, I think I opened my store 2 summers ago. I mean, you guys have developed so many things since then. And the very few things that have gone sideways, might be because I didn't have tracking on, and that was, my bad. And I changed that and put on tracking so that you actually have to buy some kind of tracking. Things that you learn as you're just going down this path. But you guys have always been great with support and just getting back to me and being like, oh, this is the kit, let us chase that, or whatever, So it makes me feel confident and that I'm in good hands and that I can move forward and create more of these beautiful books, because you've already proven yourself, to be supportive and on top of things. And it's important, that the customer has a good experience, and you guys really that.
Definitely. It was a pleasure speaking to you, and hopefully I wish you all the best with your journey. Where could everyone find you?
Yeah, I have a website, alknorrbooks.com, but I'm more directing people toward the store now, and that is at alknorrbooks.store. And they can see this and some other products that are now up and ready to go. And thank you for just giving me the opportunity to chat with you and connect, because it can be very isolating being the little author in the corner who doesn't ever talk to anyone. So thank you.
It's been a pleasure, honestly.